What up YouTube, it's your boy ProfessorStix and I'm back again with another Call of Duty Warzone video. Today we're going to be comparing the KSP 45 and the Bullfrog. We'll be comparing the stats, looking at the recoil pattern, and I'll be sharing with you the best attachments. Now, a few people have mentioned, why isn't anybody using the KSP? I wanted to find out, is it viable in Warzone? If this is your first time here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I make Warzone tips and tricks videos and I compare the best weapons in Warzone. Let's get into it. Now, the KSP has an ADS speed of 215 milliseconds compared to the Bullfrog, which has an ADS speed of 220 milliseconds. The movement speed for the KSP is 4.95 meters per second, and the Bullfrog has a movement speed of 4.8 meters per second. The reload time on the KSP is 2.13 seconds, and the reload time on the Bullfrog is 2.2 seconds. The rate of fire for the KSP is 510 rounds per minute, and the rate of fire for the Bullfrog is 751 rounds per minute. So we can see here, pretty evenly matched. The Bullfrog does have an edge on the rate of fire, but that is obvious because the KSP is a burst weapon. All right, so let's take a look at the damage profile. The KSP does 64 damage to the head, which means it's going to take 4 shots to down a fully armored opponent, and the Bullfrog does 50 damage to the head, which means it's going to take 5 shots to down a fully armored opponent. The KSP does 40 damage to the chest, which means it's going to take 7 shots to down a fully armored opponent, and the Bullfrog does 32 damage to the chest, which means it's going to take 8 shots to down a fully armored opponent. Now keep in mind that the damage fall off on the KSP is at 13 meters and the damage fall off for the Bullfrog is at 15 meters. Now if we're looking at the time to kill, it's very important that you keep this in mind. If you hit all headshots, you are going to down a fully armored opponent in 353 milliseconds with the KSP, but that's going to take 2 burst fires in order to hit that time to kill, and you have to make sure the first 4 bullets hit your opponent. Now that's pretty much impossible. Now take a look at this. If you hit all chest shots, it's going to take 706 milliseconds to down a fully armored opponent, and that's 3 burst fires, and that's really bad for a time to kill for an SMG, simply because you literally have no room for error. If you miss any one of those bursts in the first 3 burst fire, your time to kill is going to be absolutely atrocious. We're looking at plus 1 second to down a fully armored opponent in close range combat. You're gonna absolutely get wiped by pretty much all other SMGs or shotguns and even some of the ARs. Take a look at the Bullfrog. If you hit all your headshots, you're gonna down somebody in 320 milliseconds, but if you hit all chest shots, you're gonna down somebody in 559 milliseconds. That's an advantage over the KSP. Now take a look, if you hit 1 or 2 headshots, you can get your time to kill down to 588 milliseconds for the KSP, but that again means that you have to be super accurate. And to bring that time to kill to 471 milliseconds, you have to hit 3 headshots, which is pretty difficult to do with a burst fire weapon. Now with the Bullfrog, if you hit 2 or 3 headshots, you are going to bring your TTK to 479 milliseconds, which is pretty impressive. We already know that the Bullfrog is in the meta. So is the KSP good enough to use? It's pretty fun, it's pretty decent. All right, so let's take a look at the recoil pattern. All right, so taking a look at the recoil pattern, we have the KSP on the left and the Bullfrog on the right. The KSP doesn't have much recoil, not a lot of vertical recoil, not a lot of horizontal recoil. It is a burst fire SMG, so the bullets are going to be overlapping each other, which should theoretically make it easier to hit more headshots or more chest shots. The bullets should land in the same space. With the Bullfrog, you can see that it's pretty much vertical, veering off into the left. Pretty easy recoil pattern to control in my opinion, especially when you're going to be using it in that 5 to 10, 15 meter range. All right, let's get into the situational use. The KSP has crazy damage to the head and decent damage to the chest. You definitely should use this at close to mid range and make sure that trigger finger is quick. It's decent for one-on-one fights, but requires a lot of skill if you want to take on multiple opponents. All right, let's jump into the attachments. All right guys, so for the attachments, very quickly, what I have here is the blueprint for the KSP. It's in your armory, the Dragon Idol. If you got the season 2 battle pass, you would have gotten this in the battle pass. This is what I used actually for my KSP build. I didn't have time to unlock all of the different attachments because I'm not really gonna even use the KSP ever again after this video. Maybe if I'm just like super bored, I want to try something different. But here is the build that comes with the blueprint. This is how I used it. Worked great for me. If I would switch anything out, I would probably just take the mounted flashlight take that out for the front grip, and that's pretty much it. That's the only thing that I would probably change. So this is the build for the KSP. For the Bullfrog, a little bit different, trying out some new things. We're obviously going to use the sound suppressor now on the SMG since it's been recently buffed. It's going to give you sound suppression, ADS speed increase, bullet velocity increase, and that sprint to fire speed. You're going to take a hit on the effective damage range, but it's not that big of a deal because we're going to be using the task force. That's going to give you additional effective damage range. It's going to give you bullet velocity, and it's going to give you that strafe speed. You are going to get a hit on the vertical and horizontal recoil, but the Bullfrog literally has no horizontal recoil. And even if you were to put on an underbarrel, the vertical recoil is still pretty exaggerated, as you saw in the recoil pattern. So it's up to you if you want to put on an underbarrel. We're going to put on the KGB target designator. This is going to give you some hip fire accuracy, which is good for an SMG, but it's also going to give you extended damage range. So that's going to give you that extended damage range that we lost from the sound suppressor. We're going to put on the microflex LED because, you know, we want to hit them headshots with the Bullfrog, and then the KGB skeletal stock. You're going to use that for the strafe speed, the aim walking movement speed. All right, so here are my final thoughts. The KSP theoretically should be really good. The time to kill is pretty decent if you're hitting those headshots, but here's the thing, you have to hit those headshots, and with a burst fire SMG, that is pretty difficult to do in those close range combats, especially with those rose skins, slide canceling, jumping around. It's gonna be pretty hard to hit shots with the KSP, and that's gonna bring your time to kill to very, very slow. We're talking plus 1 second. That's really, really bad in Warzone. So is the KSP viable? No, not really. All right, guys, that's it for me. As always, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can find your way back for more Call of Duty content. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.